couple things of note for me. One is if I'm Tata Martino, the manager of Inter Miami, there's no way that I'm stating how many minutes he's going to play.
Not at all.
I'm not going to tell. I might allude to the fact that he could start because you want Houston Dynamo to potentially prepare for him in a certain way. And then when he doesn't start, they're going to be like, oh, great, we have to adjust. They're going to figure that out, about an hour before kickoff? Yeah. So they have some time to figure that out. But then if Messi comes on and everybody's tired with 30 minutes left to go, that's a game changer. We saw that. Remember when he came off the bench against the Red Bulls? He came on, did his thing, scored a goal, and everybody went home happy, even though he didn't start. And I think we could see something similar tonight.
Yeah, I would imagine that's how it's going to be. And just knowing Messi, what we know of him, he's playing in a final. If he can play any kind of minutes, he's making sure that he gets himself on the field. So I'm sure that is a conversation him and Tata have, and Tata's holding his cards close, as he should.
Yeah.
But we're just hours away now, and then we can stop talking about if Messi's going to play or not.
Well, Jordi Alba looks like he's not going to play, right?
Yeah.
I think we were, you know, from what Tata said yesterday about Jordi Alba, he said that's going to be really difficult. But Messi, on the other hand, he's here. He looks good, and we'll see how much he features. But it's also going to be really interesting in terms of individual matchups, especially on the sideline with Tata and with Ben Olsen, because it's been, you know, what a journey it has been for Ben Olsen. We were just talking about it before we came on air. Obviously, they come into this match. Would you say as underdogs, Jimmy, in this game?
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah, if they were playing this game in Houston, maybe I would give a slight edge to Houston, given how well they've performed at home and given their identity now under Ben Olsen and under GM Pat Onstad, who was on the show yesterday and gave us some good insight. What I have found fascinating with this version of the Houston Dynamo is how good they've played under Ben Olsen. We didn't really see this champagne football from him at DC United. DC United, just to give everybody some context about Ben Olsen, when he retired from playing, and he's a legend for the club at DC United, he went and was an assistant coach under Kurt Onalfo. Kurt Onalfo got sacked a couple months later. Ben Olsen takes the job, has the job for 10 years, and it always felt like he was in survival mode. He never really got to build the team that he wanted. And now he comes into a Houston organization that has an identity or a plan of where they want to go. And because of his relationship with Pat Onstad when they were together at DC United, it just felt like it was the right time for him to jump back in. Also, getting fired from that job with the club he's been at his whole life, I think gave him some time to reflect on what kind of coach he wanted to be. And I think we're seeing a great version of it now. And the team's an extension of him.
Yeah. It does feel like there's a freedom to the way that he wants to play now, and you're alluding to that. Because if you watch Houston play, this is not the Houston of yesteryear. In the last few years, they've been difficult to watch, but now if there's a Houston game, I'm turning it on to watch. Because if you go back to that game against St. Louis or even Vancouver, some of the goals they play and the way they interchange lines, get their fullbacks high, Corey Baird and what he's done there, Carrasquilla, Hector Herrera, Artur is revitalized. This team is a lot more challenging than you would have expected at the beginning of the season. It all has to do with the freedom that Ben Olsen has allowed them to play with.
One thing that he said that was really interesting in his press conference, because of course he was asked about Messi, which, you know, as a manager, it must just get a bit exhausting all the time talking about Messi. But they asked him, how are you going to stop him? And he said, well, let's ask the other 5,000 top European coaches that are much better than me that haven't been able to manage that. So I suppose in some ways, Alexis, how are you preparing two separate game plans for tonight with and without him?
I mean, already that's an advantage for Inter Miami. Inter Miami knows who's showing up for Houston. So you talk about 1-11 that's going to come at you. Possibly maybe one or two changes max if there was an injury. But if you're Houston, if you're Ben Olsen, now you have to sit there and go, here's what we do. And then half the meeting is here's what we do if this guy doesn't show up. It's very difficult. And we could talk about, you know, champagne football, all of this. Yeah, it's a very different than what we saw in D.C. But if we're being honest, 11% of their passes are progressive. That's second worst, only behind Toronto in this league. How are you going?
You never want to be associated with Toronto.
No, not a good thing.
They are
not
bad.
This year.
Bad.
How are you going to, one, advance the ball when you have an opportunity? Because you know Tata Martino style is everyone go. Let's try to attack as much as possible. How are you going to potentially stop Busquets from having his input? Inter Miami is the top team for through balls. How are you going to stop that? But get Hector Herrera and your fullbacks. How is Coco Carrasquilla not going to have to maybe pull back and get deeper to defend and stop some of that opportunities from Busquets?
Yeah.
One of the greatest midfielders of our time.
Yeah, I do feel like Carrasquilla and the way that he plays, especially when they utilize him on the wing, he tucks inside, and that's going to be difficult for Busquets. Because if you overload that space in the midfield centrally, maybe that is an outlet for this Houston squad to get quickly out the other way, occupy the center of the field, and then allow their outside backs to advance. But those are all good points, and I feel like Houston, yeah, we just talked about how they are the underdogs coming in here, and they have a lot of things that they have to look to say, okay, how do we manage this, especially early on? First 15, 20 minutes, they have to be tight defensively.
Yeah. Speaking of Busquets, what about the individual matchups? So, you know, him and Hector Herrera, they overlapped in Spain for a couple of years. Jimmy, I mean, individually, what are you expecting to see from them?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see how both teams defend these respective players. When I think about Messi coming into the team and what we've discussed so far, how do you suffocate the service into these particular players? And I think you got to get around Busquets. His awareness of where Messi likes to pick up the ball, and Messi's very good, obviously, at finding those pockets between the lines. You can't stop it completely, but can you get around Busquets and make the game difficult for him? Because if you do, that's the metronome. He does an excellent job of knowing when to switch the point of attack, when to keep it, when to play safe, when to play forward. And he's so good at it. I think we almost don't even fully appreciate how good he is at that part of the game. But if you can suffocate his ability to do that, then I think you limit the influence that Messi and others can have. Now, when you think about Hector Herrera, he knows what Busquets has. And he's seen it not only here in MLS, but also in La Liga when they played against each other with Atletico and Barcelona. So I think that's going to be a great matchup. I don't know if it's going to be completely right on top of each other, but it would be interesting if Ben Olsen decides, I want Herrera to stand right on Busquets, and I want to know what kind of gum he's chewing. You know, I want him to be that close to make it that difficult for him to have that type of influence. It's going to be a great matchup, and as much as we can say kind of like these overarching themes, there's all these specific matchups in the game that are really going to determine who wins and who loses.
Another one of those is Kamal Miller and Corey Baird. Obviously, they've been all over MLS, but now it feels like they've really found their home with these two teams, Alexis.
Yeah, and look, when we talk about Kamal Miller, we've talked about three different Kamal Millers. The Kamal Miller that we know, the Kamal Miller we suddenly found out was available after Messi, Busquets, and Jordi Alba come, who was, as Nico put it, was balling. I like that he's using some of my terminology now. Thank you. Get a little bit more East Coast in there. You know what I mean? Kamal Miller was a completely different player, but has he come down to earth? That's a big worry if you're Miami, because if Miami has a weak link anywhere, it's that back line, especially with Kristoff potentially being, having an injury or maybe not being 100%. You're going to need Kamal Miller to be that Kamal Miller we saw during the high-flying Inter Miami days of when Messi first came.
They've played so many games in such a short period of time. I mean, we can use him as an example of how difficult that is.
Yeah, and I feel like this actually is going to be a matchup. We're going to see those two next to each other a lot. And Corey Baird has silently become a really good 9 in this league. And not your traditional 9, big center forward getting in the box for headed balls, but he'll play like a little bit of a false 9. So I think if Baird can get on the side where he is against Kamal Miller, pull him around and drag him around it a little bit, which we've seen Miller be tempted to go into the midfield at times, follow Baird. There's going to be spaces for Houston if they can get those progressive passes up a little bit to find that space at which Miller leaves unoccupied. So I think Baird's role in the game today and how he occupies the center backs is going to be massive for Houston.
Do you know what's just so crazy is to think, how is Inter Miami here? You know, at the start of the season, if someone was to tell you, Lionel Messi is going to arrive with Jordi Alba and everybody else, then they're going to win the Leagues Cup, then they're going to be in the Open Cup final, and then potentially make the playoffs, and then who knows what happens after that. I mean, this has to be one of the greatest stories, doesn't it, Jimmy, that we've seen in MLS?
Yes,
ever?
I got 2 words for you, Leo Messi. I think that makes a big difference. And this isn't 2 words, but a lot of money that's solving some of these problems, because not only do you bring in Leo Messi, you bring in some of his best friends. And what I think has been interesting about his move from France and winning a World Cup into MLS is he looks like he's enjoying himself. I don't think I've seen him play with this type of smile on his face for quite some time. And when you have a player of his quality smiling and having fun, it just makes a whole difference.
A lot of is one word. So that
a lot of,
a lot of money.
Just squeeze it together.
I put a lot of words together.
No, a lot of is one word. You got that.
Can I do one more matchup? Because I think that left side defensively for Miami and the right side for Houston is going to be interesting, because Griffin Dorsey is playing outside back. He's kind of solidified that spot. And we don't know who's playing outside back for Miami on that left side. With no Jordi Alba, I think it's probably going to be Noah Allen. But the way that Dorsey's playing and occupying the wing and coming inside and using his left foot to shoot, I think that's going to be a spot to watch too. Not the big stars of the other ones, but something to keep your eye on is how Miami handles that side.